Tomorrow's the day Donald Trump has been laser focused on for the past several weeks, when Congress will meet to ratify Joe Biden's presidential win. It's a meeting that's supposed to be fairly ordinary, the congressional equivalent of a rubber stamp on an election that's long over, but Trump has managed to set the stage for it to become a battle royale, starring none other than Mike Pence, who's been under increasing pressure from the president to overturn the election results. This morning, Trump tweeted, "The vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors," a statement that's not the least bit true. Pence's only job, in fact, is to count the votes, but shows how much pressure the president is applying, as he also did last night during a rally speech in Georgia, which was supposed to be about today's runoff elections, but instead focused on this.
I hope Mike Pence comes through for us, I have to tell you. I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much.
The president is urging his supporters to put on the pressure as well, calling on them to take to the streets in D.C. during the vote count, tweeting, "Be there, will be wild." Thousands are expected to turn out, including members of the white supremacist group the Proud Boys, the leader of which was recently arrested for gun possession, among other charges. Local officials have temporarily banned firearms for the duration of the protests and are calling in 300 National Guard troops for support. And many are increasingly raising the alarm about just how far the president and his supporters may be willing to go to hold on to power. Among them is William Cohen, a Republican from Maine who served as Defense Secretary under Clinton, and joined all 9 other living defense secretaries in a Washington Post op-ed over the weekend calling for a peaceful transition and warning that to, quote, involve the U.S. Armed Forces in resolving election disputes would take us into dangerous, unlawful, and unconstitutional territory. Think about it. Every living defense secretary worried that a president might enlist the military in an attempted coup. My word, not theirs. Cohen also served 3 terms in the Senate, 3 in the House, where as a freshman, he voted in the Judiciary Committee to impeach a president of his own party. That, of course, would be Richard Nixon. Secretary Cohen, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Was there one specific thing the president did that motivated you and your 9 colleagues to act?
I think it was a combination, or a culmination, I should say, of steps that he has taken, which indicated that he's willing to do anything in order to hold on to power. There are no rules, there are no laws, there are no regulations. Nothing in his mind can restrain him from whatever he wants to do. So we've seen indications of that in the past. I thought it was pretty striking when he had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, escort or join in that parade of his over through Lafayette Square. And use military force as such to plow through that crowd and in order to have a photo op with a Bible. That also in combination with what I would call a paramilitary operation up in Seattle, Washington, when they had ninja-clad government agents from what department, I guess, the Homeland Security, but firing rubber bullets into the heads of protesters and then arresting or taking them in unmarked cars down to a jail and then arresting them. That was an indication, certainly, that he was willing to go as far as possible. There were no ends to that. So a combination of that plus the discussion of using martial law to overturn the election. That was floated in the White House. It was then stated publicly by Lieutenant General Flynn. I think the culmination of that brought all of us to say there's something very dangerous taking place here. And the president has indicated and asked about insurrection. Can he invoke the insurrection law in order to use military force? So what we were trying to do is to fire a preemptive strike at the Pentagon to say, do your duty. Your duty is to the Constitution, not to Trump.
You had no indication, though, that they were going to do anything other than their duty. Is that correct?
Had no indication he was going to take any such action. Okay. But when I see him invoking or calling upon the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys to come to Washington, and it's going to be wild, well, these are some of the same folks that took over the Capitol in Michigan. And one of them, one group threatened to kidnap and behead the governor of the state. Mm-hmm. So I think anytime a president uses language like that, sends that kind of a signal out to people, he's calling for violence in the street. What we want to make sure is he doesn't use the violence that he's creating as a justification to use the military to quell it.
You know, but 74 million of our fellow Americans seem not to be troubled by this kind of behavior by the President of the United States. What's your reaction to that? What does that say to you?
That's troubling. The fact that 74 million who voted for him, and most of them are totally committed to him, whatever he says or does, indicates that they are not committed to the rule of law. They're committed to the president. The rule of law is what is central, has been central to our society and to our government, and frankly to the Republican Party. And when you start to abandon the rule of law, then you're left with the law of rule, or the law of the jungle where might makes right. That's something I think most Americans don't openly support or inwardly support, but they are being told to follow a leader who has no regard for the law.
Speaking of Republican Party, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 Republican senators in the chamber in which you served for almost 2 decades are going to stand up tomorrow and object to the certification of electors from a handful of states with absolutely no evidence, none, that there was anything on any grand scale that was inappropriate or fraudulent, despite the allegations by the president. What's your reaction to that, Secretary?
I don't think they deserve the title of honorable. That's a title that represents that people admire and respect the office which they hold. For any of the senators to make those objections based on no facts whatsoever having been presented, only in order to appease the President of the United States who has lost the election, to me makes them unworthy of the title.
Well, I would argue the person who's been the appeaser-in-chief has been the Vice President of the United States. He presides over this session tomorrow. The Constitution prescribes ministerial functions for him, but I mentioned a minute ago the President tweeted this morning the Vice President has the power to reject fraudulent chosen electors. Do you have confidence that Vice President Pence will show loyalty to the Constitution rather than fealty to the man he seems to view as his boss?
Well, I would expect that he would. He has been a traditional conservative. Conservatives believe in the rule of law. And it's troubling to me to see that he's really in a state of emotional turmoil or psychological turmoil between choosing fealty versus choosing his oath to the Constitution. But I still would expect, notwithstanding his being vice president and serving as president, that he would abide by his constitutional duty and not the president.
You know, I read an interview with you the other day in which you were asked if you're comfortable with the term coup to describe an attempted coup, to describe the behavior of the president, and you said yes. Were there moments, or have there been moments, either in the drafting or agreeing to this document that 10 of you put out, or in any of your thinking, where you've stepped back for a second and said, I can't believe I am describing the behavior of the President of the United States like this in 2020? I mean, have you had those out-of-body experience moments?
Well, we have not had inner-body experiences. We didn't even get together physically. We had a letter that was circulated, initiated by former Secretary of Defense and former Vice President Cheney. And that was circulated. We all had a chance to read it, modify it. But we were all in total simpatico as such with our concerns and worry and concerned about what this president has done and the actions he's taken in terms of using and abusing the military, that we felt compelled, without having to share any phone conversations or talk amongst ourselves, that we all knew intuitively we are on a dangerous path if the president takes this kind of action to use the military for a political purpose. So we didn't have to talk about it. All of us knew exactly what was at risk, and it's our country and our Constitution.
You worried about the future of your party?
I'm worried about the future of the country. I'm worried that one man could drive the existing divisions. We've always had divisions in this country. That's why we have two parties. We have two ways of thinking about the role of government in our lives. But we've not had the kind of open hostility and generation of anger and hate by a president that has been done by Trump. He is a pretend president. A real president would seek to heal the country. A real president would go out and try and give comfort to the hundreds of thousands of people who have been harmed by COVID and died from COVID. He's not said a word, not a word of compassion. And the image I have in my own mind is that the local National Guard in El Paso was moving mobile morgues into place while he was going on a golf cart. And that is something that tells you what I think about him as the commander-in-chief, abandoning people on the battlefield while he goes to play golf.
But you don't seem to think that Trumpism disappears when Trump at least disappears from the Oval Office on January 20th, do you?
I don't, because you've seen some of the brightest of our party in the Senate and the House, highly educated, well-trained individuals who were signing on to this notion of supporting a review or rebuke of the votes that have taken place based on no evidence whatsoever. President Trump has said these are fraudulent, and the people are angry. They're angry because you've told them it's fraudulent, and then you're using their anger to try and justify not recognizing the vote. This is something it's unprecedented, it's dangerous, it's unconstitutional, and unpatriotic.
Secretary, thanks for your service and thanks for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thank you.